traffic, tow 4041 uniform, departing 11 for Idaho.
This is Soaring the Sky, a glider pilot's podcast, coming to you from the Mid-Atlantic region here in the United States and bringing you great soaring content from glider pilots all over the globe. We now join Chuck and our guest pilot.
Hello and welcome to the podcast and Happy New Year 2023. I cannot believe it. We are starting our 5th year podcasting here on Soaring the Sky, and we're going to go over the best of 2022 and actually have someone with me here today.
Hi, Chuck.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing really amazing. It was a great year, the 2022. Really great podcasts to hear from you and from many other guests that you invited. So I'm really thrilled to chat about it with you.
Oh, yes, I'm excited to talk about it. It was such a fun year. And a big thank you going out to all the guest hosts and, of course, all the guests of 2022. But, yeah, we're going to kind of go down the list here. But I asked you to pick your favorites for the year. So I'm really curious what you came up with.
Well, every episode has its pros, so it was really a tough one. But I made my top 6 list, mostly with people that I also got in touch with during the 2022. But really, the first one that touched me and I really enjoyed it was the very first episode of 2022, the mid-air collisions and water landings, the short stories that you shared. That was really interesting one.
Oh, that's awesome because, I was on the fence on that one. I when I was putting the episode together, I was like, okay, we're going to go with a bunch of short stories. I don't know how it's going to go. But yeah, it ended up being actually not the most downloaded, but it came in as number 2. So that's don't want to give up the list here before we talk about it. But yeah, that actually came in number 2. So that's interesting. What were some of your other favorites?
Well, the other favorite one was with Tobias Barth, Behind the Lens of a Glider Pilot, because I was so lucky that I could work with Tobias as I was modeling for him during the wave camp. So when I was actually listening to it, I didn't even know that I will get in touch with him later on during the year. So this was pretty interesting one because I heard how it goes before I was actually involved. So this was really interesting one, and Toby does a really great work, and it's great that he actually spoke about it because it's not usual to be like air-to-air photographer, and he has many gliding stories to share. So yes, this was another interesting one.
Well, now I have to take a break and ask you about that because I'm really curious. So how did that happen, and what did you do in the air there with Toby?
Well, actually, Toby reached me via Instagram. So lucky that we have an Instagram because you can meet a lot of people all around the globe that are touched with the same love for gliding. And he actually told me that he was going to go for a wave camp in Czech Republic in Jeseníky Mountains. And he asked me if there were any interesting gliders to do a photo shoot with. And I was lucky enough that in September I retrained for ASG 29, and so I reached him that I will be flying the ASG, and if he actually wants to do the photo shoot with me, or if he is really in, because I couldn't believe that something like that could happen to me. And somehow, I was really surprised. And yeah, he was in. And so, during the wave camp, we chatted a bit about it. And we just like let it be. If we can meet there, we will meet and we will do the photo shoot. And 2 days in a row, we weren't lucky enough to actually meet up there, because it's really hard to meet someone in the wave if it works to a pretty reasonable height. So once I met Toby like 1 hour before the sunset, and he was 2 kilometers above me, so it wasn't really that
Oh, wow.
easy.
Wow.
And yeah, one day, yeah, but one day it went through. So we reached each other on the wave frequency, and yeah, we were just doing the turns in a wave, and Toby got all his arm with the camera out of the window, freezing for
Oh, man.
15 minutes before he actually made the shoes that was worth doing something or making something.
Wow.
So yeah, once we were done, Toby got the arm back in the canopy, and he just said, "Oh, and now my hand is frozen."
Oh,
So,
man.
so yeah, he really is an pretty big enthusiast. Speaking about the photo shooting, because putting the whole arm out of the window from the canopy and do the photo shoot for like the whole day, because I wasn't the only one. He was doing basically just the photo shooting during the wave camp. And yeah, so I hope that Toby is okay. But
Oh.
we have pretty amazing photos for the memory. So it was
And
amazing experience.
did you share some of those on social media if people want to check that out?
I shared one at the
Okay.
moment, but I have few more that I would love to share, because all the photos that we did were amazing. And actually, I wanted to pick one for my wall to print it, but it's really hard to choose only one.
Oh, yeah.
So
He has
all
some
his
amazing
photos he
shots.
shared, yeah, all the photos he shared with me from our photo shoot were amazing. And as I saw other photos from Toby, he did with others, oh my god, really amazing ones.
Yeah, his work is amazing. All right, we're going to jump back to the list here. I'm curious to hear some of your other favorites, and then I'm going to get into the most downloaded episodes for 2022 here.
Well, another one I pretty enjoyed was cross country soaring in the French Alps with Christopher Fleming, because he must be an enthusiast to move to the French Alps just to enjoy more of gliding.
Right?
So yeah, I feel him. So this was another episode I really loved.
I agree with that one. Yeah. Any other
Yeah.
favorites?
Well, another one with pretty interesting title was Area 51 UFOs and Potato Guns with Jake McDaniel. Firstly, because I searched something about flying in the Las Vegas Valley,
Right?
so it was pretty interesting to actually hear about it. So this was another one I pretty enjoyed, and it made me kind of think that I need to visit California in my life at least once, and
Oh, yeah,
definitely,
absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely, you
definitely,
have to do that.
yeah, okay, yeah, I know, already in the list, so
Good,
no
good.
worries.
You'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's I of course talked about this before, but I did have the privilege of flying out there over the San Gabriel Mountains there in the desert, the high desert east of LA, and it was amazing. Definitely have to do that.
Well, it's
Okay,
definitely something else.
yes, it is. It's an amazing place to fly. So I'm going to get into the most downloaded episodes of 2022 here real quick, and then I'm going to give you the most liked episode on social media. So number 10, I have Ian Brubaker and Sailplanes and Hang Gliders that came in. Amelia, that was a really cool episode. Had a lot of fun chatting with Amelia. She came in at number 9. And number 8, Behind the Lens. Speaking of Toby, Behind the Lens of a Glider Pilot. That was with Toby Barth. And that was a super fun episode. Number 7, Cross Country Across the Country with Gordon Bettinger. Gordon, I hope I pronounced your last name there correctly. That came in at number 7. Number 6, A Soaring Safari, and this was a fun one, with Bruno Vassal and Dan Roble. Guest hosted, of course, by Clemens Tripak, and Clemens, we're always grateful to have him as a guest host here on the podcast. You said you were following that one actually on Facebook, right? A lot of people were.
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of people actually follow this like a trip, because it was something new. Of course, we have Euroglide that you travel throughout Europe, but this was something. It was really something else. They made it quite interesting with all those adventures they had. So this was really enjoyable. It
I
was
was.
really awesome. We actually planned something similar with a few of my friends. We just stay calm, and we want to do it all across Czech Republic and Slovakia. So hopefully we can make it. But we can, or we want to take it adventurously as the guys did with the
Right.
Soaring Safari.
Well, we are looking forward to hearing about that in the future here.
Hopefully,
I'm sure you have a lot of research to do, and but that's
definitely
it's
a
gonna
lot
be
of planning.
interesting. Yes, absolutely. And the one with Bruno Bassel and Dan Roble we're just talking about, that actually was got the most likes on social media. So,
Hmm. I can believe that.
yeah. And number 5, a cross country soaring in the Alps. Chris Fleming, that was a lot of fun doing that episode,
Hmm.
talking to him. And number 4, Project AKX, of course, the Flying Wing. We talked to Dominic about that one. And number 3, the Soaring Kings of YouTube, Bruno Vassal and Stefan Longer. I have to say this was probably my favorite episode of 2022. Getting Bruno and Stefan together. Of course, the Kings of YouTube. They had most downloads of anyone else in the soaring community.
Definitely. I think
And
they do quite a lot for the gliding community, speaking about all the videos they share, because
absolutely,
each of the video is so enjoyable. You can actually learn from it somehow. And yeah, I think that they do quite a lot for the soaring community. And speaking about that, I always remember Matt Wright, aka Bellica, from YouTube, because he
yes,
did so many enjoyable videos. Blue Sky. And
yeah,
yeah, so they quite try to follow the gliding adventures. And yes, it's so amazing that they do what they do.
absolutely, reaching millions of people that normally wouldn't probably even pay attention to what was going on in the gliding world. So, who knows how many glider pilots out there actually got started because of Stefan or Bruno and Matt.
Yeah, definitely. I was quite
Number,
surprised how I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead. You're quite surprised. What?
Well, I'm quite surprised how big influence the videos have, because recently I spoke with a few starting glider pilots in Czech Republic, and they were like, "Oh my God, there are so many people sharing their adventures on social media, YouTube, Instagram, mostly the Instagram, and they are actually willing to do more and to gain more as they see it." So it always works when you show somebody how amazing it is. They are willing to do anything to experience that too. So I think
Absolutely.
that the videos work so well. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Totally agree with that one. Number 2, this one surprised me, but then you said it was one of your favorites, and that was the short stories.
Yeah. The mid-air
So that,
collisions. Yeah.
yeah, crash landings and mid-air collisions, short stories came in at number 2, and the number 1 most downloaded episode. Are you ready?
Oh, thrilled. Drum roll.
That's right, drum roll. That's the best I can do with my drums.
Perfect.
Water landing, an interview with David Crowder, guest host, of course, Zach Yamauchi, and we greatly appreciate him being a guest host here on the podcast. That was the most downloaded episode of 2022.
Well, I'm not really that surprised about this one, because it's always great to hear some of those experiences that luckily you don't really have to experience yourself.
Yeah,
So
really,
yeah, it's always nice to hear the thoughts that comes to the mind when you have to face something like this, or some situation similar to this. So yeah, this was quite an enjoyable episode as well. I enjoyed that too.
Yeah, and I want to thank David for sharing that story because that's not an easy one to do, but
Yeah.
he definitely wanted to share it so others could learn from it. So thanks to David for that.
Yeah, thank you very much for that because it's not really easy to share the difficult moments from gliding, and it's always really hard to kind of settle all those thoughts that you went through yourself and emotions, of course. So yeah, it's really great that he was that strong to share it and that we can learn actually from it.
Absolutely. I can't imagine what was going through his head. That's just it's amazing. But thankfully he's with us and he was able to share his story, and like I said, a lot of people learn from it. So Barbara, what we're going to do now is we're going to play some audio from each and every one of these episodes here. And
Hmm.
of course, if anyone hasn't heard any of these episodes, go back and take a listen. There's so much great soaring content here, and all these guest pilots have given us their time, including you, and told their stories and shared their adventures, and that's what makes the podcast here. And of course, if there's anyone out there that wants to share their adventures, or they have a friend that has an amazing story they want to share, definitely contact us here at Soaring the Sky.
Many of my pictures are taken in place where there are no lifts at the time of the photo. For example, at sunrise or sunset, or over the open sea. And at the moment the glider releases a tow rope, there are about 10 minutes left for all the photos, depending on the reached altitude and the distance to the landing point or the safety field. And the clock counts down and creates for me a very high stress level. Often there is also a high noise level at the open window. Sometimes I fly as a co-pilot with the disassembled door, and my half upper body is hanging out of the plane in the wind. Blindly operating the camera with thick gloves is simply a part of the job, and there is simply no time to search for the right camera settings.
If you had to choose one single moment, one single picture as an epitaph, and a crowning achievement of your career, which would it be?
Wow. Oh, again, what a tough question. I think uh, I think is that always considers images that are the more recent are my best images. So maybe because I'm still very emotionally attached to the planning of the image and the effort behind it. But highlights, yeah, have a few. So let me pick up two, please, not only one. The first was a planned photo flight over a nature reserve with the brand new Stemme S12. So for this, I had arranged a meet of the Stemme factory pilot in Puxhof, south of Rostock, on the Baltic Sea. It is the northeastern part of Germany. And I myself flew with Stennis in a Cessna 172, which with a retractable landing gear. So it's an hour and a half to this decision airfield, and the weather was only very moderate, and the destination airfield we had to land directly because the weather absolutely did not allow another minute in the air. So the pressure on me was particularly high since this time no glider pilot colleague from my own club flew the photo model, but a company was behind it, which sent not only the factory pilot but also their newest flagship to me. Yeah, so the weather was like the first still very questionable, um, but improved in quite good as predicted. And I had been in planning the days for about half a year. That made me additionally nervous. And after the Stemme finally landed on the airfield, the marketing boss of Stemme was the co-pilot. So now the pressure was was even higher on me. And we made a very detailed briefing, and I had one eye on the clock because the time was running for the photos. And then a short time later, together we had arranged over the island Dars. Since it was the first time I photographed out of the open window of the Cessna, I was very surprised about the wind and the gusts that also affected the camera. But the biggest challenge was actually my pilot could not see the Stämme, which was flying next to us without an engine. So I had to more or less remote control my pilot at the same time and tell him whether he should climb or think at the same time, at the same position. The pilot of the Stämme, of course, shoot, and I, of course, shoot actually together the photo. We restarted the engine of this Stämme in total 3 times to regain altitude and flew along the really great looking coast of the Baltic Sea to get a different view of the landscape again and again. So at the end, there were really unique pictures in the box and in the camera, of course. And we landed not only this one landed not only in the photo calendar, but also in the calendar of the company Stämme. So I was yes, I was a bit proud of it. And the second flight was not less exciting for me. I always want to have a beautiful landscape in background of my pictures. This is in northern Germany, partly not that easy because it looks apart from the coast of the North Sea and the Baltic Sea in the interior relatively uniform. So to say monotonously. Here, sunrise and sunset offer themselves because the landscapes is then completely different in colors, and the light draws attentionally to completely different things than during the day. After I have photographed some sunsets in the recent years, I wanted to photograph at sunrises to know whether the lights moods is perhaps even better. So I then tried to choose a suitable day for the morning haze that occurs on our region in autumn by means of a good weather forecast. The great thing is that this haze is stationary for the ground, and there is no wind blowing or wind blowing, and is only a few meter thick. For the selected day, I asked my colleague Torben if he would like to go do a sunrise flies with the brand new Mini Luck with the front electrical sustainer. And he knows my photos and was immediately on board. I drove to the airfield well before sunrise and pushed the club motor glider out of the hangar and stored my photo equipment in the cockpit. Approximately 15 minutes before sunrise, I took off to meet the Minilac with the electric motor in the front in the neighbored airfield at exactly the right moment. Yeah, the exciting thing about this that only after takeoff and with the onset of the dawn, you can tell whether the day is worth or not because it's still dark just beforehand. And this makes the sunset compared to the sunrise many times more exciting to photograph. Well, what I can say, I had interpreted the weather maps correctly. And in addition, there was some luck, of course. The morning haze was unbelievably great to look at. And it's almost hard for me to find the words for this. And due to the FES drive, we had no stress this time after he released the tow rope.
Wings and Wheels has been serving the soaring and sport aviation community for over 30 years. They hands down have the largest and most comprehensive inventory of sailplane and soaring supplies in North America, and they ship globally. Nearly everything you'll find on their site is in stock and ready for same-day shipping. Wings and Wheels is the exclusive American representative for HPH sailplanes. Be sure to check out the Twin Shark, their latest launch. They are also now the exclusive distributor in North America for the new Just Soaring Glider Sim Pro. The team has thousands of hours of flying experience in gliders and airplanes. Staffed by Adam, Kelly, Julie, and Sean. A friendly voice will answer when you call or email them. Check them out at wingsandwheels.com.
I'm Tom Cousins, and I'm really glad to be able to discuss the AKX glider with Dominic Pepe, who is the project manager at Akaflieg Karlsruhe in Germany. And so we have all kinds of things to talk about here. It's going to be a fascinating discovery of a glider that I find amazing. With my background in aeronautical engineering and model aviation and full-size aviation, the view of the AKX is amazing. So welcome, Dominic.
Thanks so much, Tom. Really glad to be here.
Oh, super, super. So tell me, first of all, or tell us actually, what is an Akaflieg?
Akaflieg. I mean, name already sounds a little strange. It's a German. It stands short for Akademische Fliegergruppe, which translates to Academic Flight Club. And there are a couple of those in Germany, 10 to be precise. And so on one part, they're normal like gliding club, but they're also a student club. So they're totally comprised of students who are keen to learn how to fly, but who are also keen to get their hands dirty and, get the whole theory of flying and gliding and building planes. So our motto is kind of like researching, building, and flying sailplanes. So we do the whole thing from the ground up. And we have this, you could call it like a cycle of researching concepts, then building them, taking them up in the air, flying them, and seeing what works, what doesn't, iterating, and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of trial and error, and it's a great starting off point if you're interested in aviation and gliding. And I personally think it's really awesome because there are so many freedoms. It allows you to do so much stuff, and you can experiment without any risks. So yeah, that's pretty much what Akaflieg is about.
So it's actually attached to a university in Germany?
Yeah, sort of. It's not like an official part of the university, but we are a recognized student club. Most Akafliegs, or at least we do, we get a building from the university, which is very nice of them.
Yes.
And yeah, we cooperate with many faculties and stuff like that. But yeah, we're completely independent of the university itself, so we can do whatever we want.
Oh, that's marvelous. Now, but because it is actually, as you say, it's a kind of an independent function of a university. Do the members, the students, actually obtain school credit for their participation?
No, we don't, unfortunately. It would be nice if we did. But there's still many opportunities where it kind of harmonizes. I'd say where maybe you can write a thesis for your studies and have that be on an Akaflieg topic, but other than that, we don't get any credit. No.
I see. Okay. What is a nice thing then is that the students more are interested just because they really want to do this, as opposed to filling in a checking off a box or something like that. And yeah, that's excellent. So tell us briefly about yourself as it relates to flying and how you became involved in the AKX project.
All right. So I started off 2012 with gliding. That was in a normal club, and got my license 2015. Well, and actually in 2015 as well, I had an internship at Champert in Germany. And that was the first time I actually heard about AKX.
Wow.
So okay. Already before I started my studies, I was like very keen to get into it and looking forward to it. And yeah, 2015, I moved to Karlsruhe, started mechanical engineering, and yeah, even before my first day at uni, I visited the Akaflieg workshop, and yeah, I was hooked from there. And then, over time, responsibilities grow and stuff. And now, I don't know, for maybe 2 years or so, or 2 years back, that's when I took over as project manager.
Hey everybody, this is Bruno Vassal IV, and I am today's guest host for Soaring the Sky podcast. And today I am here with Stefan. Is it Langer? Or, how do you
Langer.
pronounce your last name?
Langer.
Oh,
Yeah,
love it.
that's
Love
totally
it.
fine.
American accent, Langer.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
I'm here with Stefan, and really excited to first of all meet you. It's really nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And
First time that we meet each other.
Yes. So I think we've communicated a couple of times, just commenting on each other's videos or things. But yeah, really nice to meet you, and looking forward to getting to know you better. So first of all, Stefan, I notice a little bit of an accent. So are you from Chicago, New York? Where are you from?
I'm from Germany and I'm trying to speak English somehow, and I have no plan about any accents. And also, yeah, other languages like French and so on, they are not perfect.
There you go. Well, I don't speak German, or else we'd be doing this interview in German. But I do have a little helper. So let me see if I can do. Here we go. Sorry, I'm not cool enough to speak in German because I went to an English school in the United States. Here we go.
Tut mir leid, dass ich nicht cool genug bin, Deutsch zu sprechen, weil ich eine Englischschule in den Vereinigten Staaten besucht habe.
There you go. Is that pretty good?
Yeah, it's pretty good. What's we don't voice than yours.
Yeah, we don't need to speak English or German or anything. All right. Well, hey, let's jump into this because super excited to better understand what makes Stefan tick. And the reason why we're talking is let's at least introduce you a little bit. So Stefan, he is a YouTube gliding star. In fact, I don't know of anybody else that has more video views on YouTube, or probably any kind of social media, than Stefan does. I was taking a look this morning, and as of this morning, he has his gliding videos have been viewed over 51 million times, and he has 165,000 subscribers. So congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
But you also did great. At least I think till 1 year ago, we were like at the same level. And at the beginning, you were a giant. You had so many subscribers and so many more views and so on. So I thought at 100,000 subscribers at this level, we will meet somewhere.
Yeah.
And then I took the lead.
You did. Well, you've been making amazing content. So yeah, I'm just a little bit over 100,000 subscribers, and I think I'm at like 34 million views. But what's cool about that is the two of us combined, we are over. We're close to 85 million views. And what's cool about that is not for us, but for the gliding community and in the world is people are seeing gliders flying, and you're introducing to millions of people the amazing sport of gliding. So really cool stuff. So fun stuff.
And I think you were the first one who reached such a wide audience. So there you are the number one. And
Wow.
You also helped me a lot to push these videos, because you made this audience with these million views. And then if a video with a similar topic is also picking up, the algorithm suggests other videos and so on. So we help each other to grow, I would say. Every other creator, YouTuber, and gliding YouTuber is good for all of us, because we push more this gliding video stuff on the
Excellent.
internet.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit more towards the end of this, a little bit about making videos and how do you get seen. But going back to, I think, really the pioneers, I have to give a shout out to Matt Wright. Is it Baleka? And he inspired me, and he and I for a couple of years were neck and neck making videos, and he made an amazing video. So shout out to Matt, and we miss you, buddy. And you were talking about content, and actually yours and my content are a little bit different. So like, for example, one of my videos would be like, why did my glider shrink over the wintertime? or maybe if I complain a lot, I can go faster. Yet you are doing these epic, ridge or beach flying things, or you're flying, old gliders. So it's fun to see that each person has different type of content and a little bit different styles, and that's what keeps it fresh and interesting. So it's fun. Yeah. Well, let's just jump right in, and first of all, let's get to know you a little bit better. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. How old are you? What do you do for work? Do you work? Do you just make videos? Do you have any hobbies outside of gliding? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm now 29 years old. I have, I think, about 2,300 gliding hours so far. I started gliding with the age of 14, so that's the earliest age where you can start here in Germany. And yeah, I experienced many different kinds of competitions, flew in many different countries already, and that's what I try to capture also on the videos.
Hi, it's Laura from episode 128, and you're listening to Soaring the Sky, a Glider Pilots podcast.
Hang gliders are essentially a weight shift controlled aircraft, and every aircraft is weight shift controlled to a degree. I mean, we all have to deal with weight imbalances on regular aircraft for a reason. You put too much weight in the tail and you're not going to be able to put the nose down regardless of how hard you try. So the scale of hang gliders is a lot different in the sense that just our body weight being moved into different locations, either left, right, or pulling ourselves forward in front of the glider's center of gravity or aft, will allow us to bank or change the pitch of the glider. And that's essentially the controls of it. We're really only down to two axes there, because the yaw, although there are some tricks you can use to get some kind of yaw out of the glider, it's pretty much non-existent because of the nature of the glider. And for simplicity's sake too, which is really the key characteristics of hang gliders. One of the more interesting engineering problems of simplicity, weight, and cost. It's amazing to see the craftsmanship and the ideas that have gone into some of these hang gliders throughout the years, and how they've all kind of settled down to a relatively standard design, which is a delta wing shaped wing with ribs or battens, aluminum or carbon battens that give it its wing shape, and a dive recovery system to basically keep the glider from encountering a tumble. Of course, also some performance aspects or some performance upgrades to them, such as a variable geometry, which can get into later. But they've evolved in such a way that they are as simple as they are as necessary, because we always want that nice thing on the glider. But there's that distinction between hang gliders and rigid wings, which are essentially hang gliders with D cells, carbon D cells, and they have no flex, and all the controls are operated by spoilerons. And it'd be really nice to have some spoilerons on a hang glider, but then you got that much more complexity. You got 5 more minutes of setup time. You got another 10, maybe 5 pounds of weight that people just aren't going to want to carry. So it's a really interesting progression to see the gliders and how they are managing to get such great performance out of them, relatively speaking. It's kind of hard to talk about performance with, comparing hang gliders to sailplanes. I mean, they're just two absolutely different leagues.
Is it just kind of variations on a theme, or have there just been like major breakthroughs, or it's just sort of optimizing, things on the edges over the last decade?
I would say there have been some major breakthroughs in probably before the turn of the century. The biggest one, and this was done relatively early on, actually was what we call the floating crossbar. So essentially, you've got two leading edges that are pushing the wings apart. And what is keeping them apart is another cross member between the two leading edges. And since there is a nose angle, or the wings are swept back, you can kind of make like a really wide A out of that. You can imagine something like that. And the bar going across that A is what we call the crossbar. Now that has some ability to float or to shift left and right. So one of the leading edges can actually be further out or retracted somewhat. So there's some flex relative to the keel, which goes transverse to the direction of motion, or is parallel with the direction of motion roughly. So that allows the sail to flex and warp, similar to like the Wright Flyer. And it allows the glider to be much more maneuverable than just moving your weight over and waiting for gravity to do the work.
Right.
That's probably one of the major milestones of hang glider manufacturing. And I'm sure I know there are people that are much better experts on this subject. But I think that in conjunction with having a reliable dive recovery system, especially as the gliders got more and more robust and moving from 6061 aluminum to 7075 aluminum, just those are smaller iterations. And I think hang gliders have gone through a lot of that because it's a lot of trial and error. And not all these manufacturers have a team of full-fledged engineers on them. And now they mostly do, but especially back then, it was a lot of trial and error by people that just had a great idea.
Well, maybe you could touch on the dive recovery piece a little bit. You know, what does that sort of look like, or how does that work?
So if you can imagine a stall in a regular airplane, the only reason why the aircraft does not continue to rotate over is because you have a horizontal stabilizer in the rear that's providing some resisting force when the aircraft tries to rotate about the wings when you're stalling the aircraft. And for a hang glider, because we don't have that, if we get ourselves into an aggressive enough stall where the inertia of the glider rotating, trying to recover, overcomes the aerodynamic forces that our wing without a tail is exerting to try and resist that rotation, it will continue to tumble. And that's when gliders start to break.
It's a large club. I don't know how many members there are, but it's measured in the hundreds. We have a very large training program, and they track these statistics at the national level at all the clubs. And Fayence consistently ranks #1 club in France. And it's not just measured by how many students we train and how many certificates we have, but it's also, there's lots of variables in that equation. And cross-country soaring is one of them. They rank points. And so you get a point for every cross-country kilometer flown. And you get points for different badges being issued. You get points for how many licenses you issue. And so all those things added together, Fayence ends up being #1 as measured by the French National Soaring Organization. Let's call it the French SSA. So a lot of your American listeners will understand who I'm talking about. But as far as the airport, it's doing the conversion from metric to English. It's 226 meters, which is just shy of 750 feet, I think. We're 45 minutes by car off of the Mediterranean Sea. The Alps come all the way down to the sea in some places. The first several, I guess 50 kilometers of mountains are referred to as the first waves because they are long ridges which are softer than the harsh Alps of further north, kind of resembling the Appalachians in the western states. But rather than running from northeast to southwest, it's due west and due east. And as far as soaring conditions, we have everything. You just check all of the boxes. Fayence's original claim to fame was the wave box. Airspace is a lot tighter in Europe, and there aren't many places for people to climb to get their 5,000 meter gain in order to get the diamond badge. And Fayence was one of those places that we can do it. We have a wave window directly above the airport, which I believe now goes up to flight level 235 or 23,500 feet.
Nice.
Some of us now use it as a launch pad. We climb up in the window and then switch over to air traffic control to get a clearance out of the box horizontally, so we can make a high speed dive to the north where the airspace is much wider open.
Wow.
And we could get some nice wave flights in.
And is there a commercial flight school there on site?
It's a hybrid is, I guess, the best way to describe it. It's first and foremost a club, but we have professional employees. I think there's like a half a dozen employees of the club that are salaried. And there's a couple of instructors that are paid instructors, and a whole lot of volunteers. So
Nice.
The volunteers, of course, are just like any other club. They're there when they can. They do what they can. But the professional flight instructors are there. They take turns, of course. They don't work 365 days each, both of them. But there's always going to be an instructor available on any given day out of the year, 365 days a year.
Wow, nice. So given the proximity to the French Riviera and all that, I'd assume that you get some good convergent conditions that has to open up some interesting flight opportunities to go along with the wave flights. But what times are you typically are the juiciest for convergence, and what about the wave?
There's lots of different types of convergence. It's one of those reasons why the French Alps are so popular for people to come fly in, is because there's just all the boxes are checked. Yes, there is a convergence that comes off of the Mediterranean Sea. It is, of course, soarable, but it's not always a soarable friendly convergence. There's when that convergence is going well, there tends to be an inversion, a low-level inversion on the Mediterranean side of the mountain. So you might have to wait until early afternoon in order for that convergence to really help you out. And meanwhile, the soaring conditions just on the other side of the mountain have been busting since 9 o'clock in the morning. So that first convergence doesn't really help us out that much if we're trying to get these monster flights in, high kilometer flights. But the local pilots do get to a lot of practice in that Mediterranean Sea generated convergence. The much, much stronger convergence is the one that runs pretty much north-south, that separates the Italian flatlands with the French highlands. When those two air masses collide, we have convergence going up into 20,000 feet. And
wow.
We can't always soar that high again because of the airspace restrictions, but you can really push some high cross-country speeds in that convergence.
Yeah, I just have to say, the huge advantage I have is basically having the wave literally over my head where I live. So based off of that, what I want to do is essentially take advantage of the conditions that exist where I live, and I think it's all relative. You live on the East Coast, 500 kilometer flight is maybe a big flight, and that's all good. And I totally understand that. But what I try to do is compare this a lot to like surfing. If you live on the North Shore of Hawaii, well, you're going to take advantage of what you have there, which are big waves and the ability to surf that stuff. And very, very similar to that, I think, what I'm able to do, given the fact that I have these weather conditions literally in my backyard, I just want to take advantage of that. And I've always been fascinated with wave. There's a certain mystery with it. It can get real nasty. A lot of people don't like it. They don't like the cold, the icing. So there are a lot of negative things, but I see those as challenges that can be overcome. And I think given the proper preparation, I think it can be done very safely. I've had several people have had bad things happen on wave, and those are all pretty much pilot induced. And I think we learn from those mistakes. And my aviation background in the Navy and having been a safety officer, I think I think I'm pretty safe in my decision making and the preparation for these wave flights. So wave is just fascinating. That the energy that's out there is mind blowing, especially in the Sierra and the whole basically the Great Basin and even the Rockies. The conditions that we have here are just phenomenal. They're insane. And so I've done a lot of thermal stuff, obviously, also. And when you compare the two, thermaling, there's essentially a lot of work that goes into that flight. The circling and speeds are much, much slower.
Certainly.
So I think I just like the challenge of wave. It can get, like I said, it can be very demanding. It's exhausting sometimes. You get beat up, but it can be very rewarding too. And you can get some big flights out of that. And I think we've only scratched the surface with these flights. I think we can go much further, given the right equipment and the right preparation, and probably most importantly, the right conditions and being there for that, for those conditions. Unfortunately, my airline job gets in the way of that. So there are many times where I'm sitting in China or in Sydney, and I'm watching the weather out here, just grinding my teeth, wondering, oh God.
Yeah, when the FOMO is real, right?
Yeah, and without my job, I wouldn't be doing this either. So my job is a means to the fun. I think I've got the greatest job in the world, but flying itself is fun, but it doesn't. The real flying to me is getting in a glider and dealing with the weather and seeing how far we can go. So
excellent. Yeah, you mentioned equipment. Tell me about the ships you currently own and fly, both in wave and thermals.
Well, there's a single ship right now, which is a duodiscus. It's a T model, so it's got the turbo. But when I started flying this, or actually previous to the duodiscus, I started these long distance flights in my old 1971 Kestrel 17, and I equipped that with some big bottles. So I got my 2,000 kilometer diploma with 33 turn points. I did get that in the Kestrel 17, which is very rewarding because I've been flying that glider for a long time, since probably I was 17 years old. I've been flying a Kestrel 17, and I think the thing that was really neat was to basically allow everyone to see that you don't need a $500,000 airplane to go do this stuff. And
definitely.
And to flying a glider that was, I don't know, $15,000-$17,000 glider that was made in 1971 and flying over 2,000 kilometers. That was very, very rewarding to me. So that's not to put anything down that any flights that have been done in the big super glass ships, because that's going to be in the future with me. So, but I think currently I'm flying a duodiscus. And as I was saying, the duodiscus was equipped with a motor. So what we did was we pulled the engine out of this duodiscus because we needed the key with the wave flying, long distance wave flying. It's battery and oxygen, and obviously warmth. But equipment wise, it's battery and oxygen. So the gentleman I was flying with, Hugh Bennett, he was an older gentleman. He had the duodiscus, and he wanted to do some of these flights with me. And he was already in his late 70s, early maybe 80. Late 70s actually. And so he approached me, wanted to do some of these flights, and he's an adventurous type, had a sailing background. And so I said, okay, if you want to do this, pull the motor out of the duodiscus, fill as much oxygen capacity in the back of that in that engine bay as you can, and we need to get as much battery juice as we can in the glider. So bottom line, we have over, it's over 100 square cubic feet of oxygen.
That's incredible.
So we have so oxygen. The reason why I say oxygen is so important, you don't want to get into a 10, 11, 12 hour situation and you're running low then and you still have a lot of time to go. And because unsafe decisions can be made at that point, especially when you're really determined to try to get extra miles or achieve that goal or record. So always overdo it with the oxygen, overdo it with the battery. So we started doing these flights. I think the first flight with him was 1,200 kilometers, and it was kind of a test flight, and he felt like $1 million. And so we kept stretching that further and further. And then I started thinking about doing some records with him, some 3-turn point and straight out records. And so we started doing that up and down the Sierra. And so we had a 2,000 kilometer flight, 3-turn point record. Then we had a free distance over 2,000 kilometers. Then we did I think I did an OLC. Actually in the Kestrel, I did another 2,000 kilometer flight before.
Yeah, I saw.
So I keep forgetting about what this happened a while back. So it's hard to remember. I don't remember these numbers. To me, it's all about kind of having fun and getting the experience and moving on. But so we stretched all those distances further. And then my ultimate goal, my passion, my real passion, it's not necessarily going up and down the Sierra, it's going downwind, kind of following in the footsteps of Mike Kerner and Henry Coombs. And I think we have the ability to make some super long downwind flights. And we'll talk about that here in a bit, I think.
I started my journey in aviation about 3 years ago through gliding, but my love for aviation first came about 10 years ago when I flew to the Scilly Isles on a Twin Otter. And in the Twin Otter, you can see right into the cockpit, and there were 2 female pilots in the front, which is what I believe sparked my love for aviation. I mean, I previously had tried loads of different sports, such as horse riding, power boating, mountain biking, and even rally driving. And simply because of how expensive they were, I couldn't pursue on with them. And partly my whole love for a sport was aviation. So that's partly why I wanted to go with aviation, was because that's what I always wanted to do since I was little. And I think that's partly what my parents knew what I wanted to do as well, because no matter what I was doing, I was always looking at the sky for an airplane, because that's it's what I think I've always wanted to do, and I'm doing right now. So I am a 15-year-old bronze glider pilot at 2 different clubs, and I have 2 of my silver legs almost complete, and I am flying gliders simply because of how cheap they are. And for example, a glider costs about £10 an hour, whereas a powered aircraft here in the UK is about 10 times that price.
That is actually how I found Soaring myself. I was looking for something more affordable. Powered is very expensive, and searched around, and I found that gliders was much more affordable. So can you tell us about where you fly? You mentioned 2 clubs, but I guess the main club you fly, or both of them for that matter, the soaring opportunities there, how long your soaring is, what's the terrain like, any of that you'd like to tell us?
So currently I'm based here in the UK, and I fly from 2 different clubs, which are 2 very different clubs in the way we have to land, fly and soar. And so my home club is Oxford Gliding Club, which is right next to Oxford, about an hour and a half away from London. And it is a massive flatland site. It is huge. We can get up to 2,000 feet plus off the winch launcher on a good day. It relies primarily on thermal lift, and very rarely we've even had wave lift around there. And I've had 1 wave flight there in the 3 years I've been there. And I first started off at Bicester, which is literally 10 kilometres to the east of Oxford, because Bicester Gliding Club sadly had to close because they lost the east on the airfield. I moved to Oxford Gliding Club, and it isn't very far away from where I live, so that's partly the convenience of it. And it is a really nice club. There's loads of gliders. And moving on to my second club, which is Midland Gliding Club, which is based up in Shropshire. It is situated right next to the border of Wales, and it sits about 700 feet above the valley. And in a directly westerly wind, we can soar about a 15-kilometre long ridge, which is really nice. I've never personally had a ridge day yet, because it only works in a westerly, and westerly winds sort of gusting 20 knots is bang on perfect for gliders, but there'd be paragliders riding along this ridge at 10 knots and we need 20 knots. But unfortunately, I haven't experienced any ridge flying yet, but I've had some thermic flights from there, and quite regularly they do actually get quite a lot of wave lift, up to 10,000 feet plus.
Oh,
but
wow.
You've got to be in the right spot at the right time to get in it. And I haven't actually experienced any sort of wave flying yet, but I'm really looking forward to flying in wave and experience that new world of soaring in the wintertime during going up to heights airliners can fly at, which I think is pretty epic. And typically here in the UK, our thermic soaring season will last around 7 to 8 months, depending on what the weather's doing and what cold and warm fronts are coming through. But usually it lasts typically 7 to 8 months. I mean, in November, I had a 20-minute flight relying on thermal lift, which I think was shocking to everyone because we wasn't really expecting it to catch that thermal, which was really epic. But using other sources of lift, so wave and ridge, we can stay up all year round. And people have known to do their silver duration of 5 hours on a ridge during the winter.
Oh, nice.
Whereas I had to do my 5 hours primarily on thermal lift.
Right. The winch launch now, is that both clubs?
Yeah. So primarily at both clubs, we are winch launch only, but 10 minutes up the road from Oxford, there is an aerotow club called Banbury Gliding Club, and their aerotows there are really cheap. And I did my aerotow conversion there, and it cost about £80 in total. And I went solo on about my 5th tow because I'd done some previously. And primarily it's winch launch at both clubs, but Midland Gliding Club also has a motor glider. But one of the things that makes Midland Gliding Club so special is it is actually one of the 2 sites in the world that do bungee launching, which I think for some is a very unheard of method. Essentially, you're being catapulted off the side of this hill, and you sort of start off rolling, and then this massive elastic band pings you into the air, and you just fly along the ridge until you get some altitude. And that's what makes Midland Gliding Club where it is today, because of its bungee launching capabilities.
All right, so let's get straight into why we have both of you on this podcast. The 2 of you completed recently a very cool soaring safari that took you some very spectacular areas in, I understand, I think in 5 states in the western US, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, Arizona. But before we get into the trip, what, for the listeners who don't know what that is, what is a soaring safari?
Yeah, that's a great question. What is a soaring safari? We'd never done one before. So let's just start at the beginning of this thing. 7+ years ago, our club, the Utah Soaring Association, was crazy enough to agree to let's refurbish an old 1960s glider winch. And we then, over a period of about a year, Dan and myself, we each have hundreds of hours in this process. We refurbished this glider winch. And what a glider winch is it allows you to launch a full-size glider into the air, thousands of feet up above the runway, with a trailer-based giant engine that has a giant reel of thousands of feet of rope, and it pulls it in really quickly and it launches us up, so we don't have to follow behind an airplane. So Dan and I worked on this, and during that process, kind of daydreaming, hey, it'd be fun if we were to take this on a safari someday. And early this year, I contacted Dan and said, Dan, hey, you want to go on a soaring safari for a couple of weeks? And Dan's so cool. He's just like, okay. And so it was just the 2 of us with 4 ground crew and a couple of RVs. And we decided to do a 2-week soaring safari. And that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, that is awesome. I mean, most people probably, if they heard the term soaring safari, they thought, people go and with their motor gliders, because I think that's the most convenient way to do it. Or, some people take a tow plane and the tow pilot. But I'm not sure if anyone has ever done this with a winch. so I'm really I'm really excited to hear about how that all worked. So
Yeah, so let's just give a little bit more description. So really quickly, it was about an 1,800-mile loop across these 5 states, and we'll talk about the legs. But our goal here was we were going to launch from each location and then soar to the next, and then launch from the next one with the winch. And so, that was the goal, and we accomplished it quite a bit. There were a couple of little snags and anomalies that we'll talk about, but it was mainly soar from place to place and then have the ground crew meet up with us and do it again the next day.
Right, so it's basically going from one place to the next place and then launch there the next day and try and get to the next place and so forth.
Yep.
Yeah. What kind of reception did you get with the winch when you turned up at these airports? I mean, I'm sure that some of these airport managers, they've probably never seen a winch before. They probably didn't even know what it was.
What do you think, Dan?
I think they were very receptive. They were very interested. We had every place we went, somebody came out to watch us launch. So it was, they were interested in it. We had no problems with any of the locations to let us launch with the glider.
That is great. Did people feel this was a disruption to them at all, or how did they announce it to other pilots, to other traffic? I mean, did you have to close the runway, or to set the winch up, or how did that work?
So I'll let Dan answer part of that, but let me just say I did my homework beforehand. And even though we ended up landing at a couple of airports we were not planning on flying at, I had contacted all the airport managers way before, months in advance, and they sent them videos, explained our process, and they were all excited for us to come. And there were multiple airports that we never ended up visiting because we just flew past them to make up time. And so just a real valid reception. And then one last thing with that is you said when we arrived, nobody saw us when we arrived, Dan, right? Because we were arriving between 10 o'clock at night and midnight, the caravan. Dan and I had landed hours before, but nobody saw the caravan arrive to the airport because it was so late at night. So.
Wow. So who was doing the caravanning? I mean, who was your crew?
That was mostly Bruno set up the whole crew. It was his sister, his nephew, his son, and his son's friend.
Wow. And so they were all willing participants in this. That's awesome. I mean, you can't do this on your own. So how many you had 2 RVs, right? And then what else did you slug around?
Go for it, Dan.
We had Bruno had an RV and he towed one of the glider trailers. Bruno's truck towed the winch. My truck towed a 5th-wheel camper, and an SUV towed the other glider trailer.
Wow! So you had both trailers with you in case of a land out, yeah?
Yeah, we're crazy, but we're not stupid. We're going to bring trailers just in case.
Yeah. So you basically had but you could have the trailers behind. One was behind the RV, and the other one was behind the winch. So you only had 2.
No, one was behind an SUV and one was behind the motorhome.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Well, it's quite a logistical undertaking. So, how long have you been planning this?
I've been daydreaming about it for a couple of years, but I started getting serious last year when I decided not to host the 2022 Nephi event, and because I wanted to do this instead.
David, so we spoke last week about the day of your lake landing in great detail, kind of debriefing the event, debriefing the day, figuring out what exactly went on. And for those listeners that are not familiar with the Sierra Nevada, Lake Tahoe, Truckee area, just kind of give you guys a brief overview of that soaring site. So Truckee's a beautiful airport located right outside of the town of Truckee at 6,000 feet field elevation in Northern California. And a few miles south of the airport is Lake Tahoe. So it's a alpine lake, one of the biggest lakes in California, 22 miles north to south, 12 miles east to west, and surrounded by 8,000 and 9,000 foot peaks right up against the water, essentially. So small watershed, a bowl, essentially, that surrounds that lake. And it offers spectacular soaring, spectacular views, but getting back into Truckee at the end of the day, being next to essentially a bowl to the south of it, and then high mountains on all other sides, presents certain challenges. So obviously David will discuss some of those challenges he met that day. But yes, Truckee is a fantastic site, but definitely more on the advanced side of things. So David, to finish up this question, one thing I do recall you mentioning was that that day was already the worst day of soaring you had, even before you landed in the lake. Obviously, the day didn't end how you would have liked it, but what were the other factors before taking off and while in the air that led to a less than desired outcome?
Yeah. So when I arrived in Truckee days beforehand, I was actually shocked to find the temperatures at Truckee to be not summer-like. I think the Friday and Saturday before flying, I landed in the water on Sunday. So Friday and Saturday were highs of mid 40s during the day and as low as 30. And I think on Saturday night, it was like 27 degrees, the low during the night. I wasn't really prepared for winter conditions in the middle of July. Normally, the Truckee contest is a month later. And the times that I've been up here, it is...
You mean the middle of June, right?
Yeah, the middle of June. And so when I've been to Truckee, the temperatures during the day are very warm, 80 to 90 degrees. And then at night, they're very pleasant at getting down to 40. So camping is a lot of fun. And so just to be at 40 degrees all day, I'm a very small guy. I get cold very easily. And so I was just been cold, just hanging out at Truckee, waiting for the contest. And so on Sunday, the day we flew, it was warmer. It was 60 degrees about the time of the launch, but still considerably colder than I'm normally used to. And so I got the day before, I flew for about an hour, and my feet got very cold. So I landed and immediately went to the store and bought some wool socks, hoping that would address some of the issues. And so I wore my normal flight gear that I have, even gear that had kept me warm and comfortable in flight, even at altitudes up to 17,000, 17,005. And so I didn't really think much of it. And I took off and I went into, went through the start gate. The task for the day was to go from basically Truckee down to Mono Lake. There was 2 turn points that were west of Mono Lake and then a little bit east of Mono Lake and then back home. And so...
And what's the distance on that? It's about a 500K task?
Yeah, I would say it's shy, maybe 400, 450 kilometer task for that day.
Yeah, and regardless of the exact distance, Truckee is just on when the conditions permit, the contest has a reputation of doing pretty sizable tasks for.
Yeah, I thought the task was a moderate medium length, and it seemed appropriate for the day when leaving through the start gate. And so leaving through the start gate, I went through on the west side of the lake, which is not the typical exit out of Truckee, but the clouds were there, and I had plenty of height coming out of the start gate. And I actually got low over South Tahoe, very close to making the decision to have to land at the airport there, but I did find lift and eventually climb out and got out to the bowl. And so I made my way south to Mono Lake, and cloud bases towards the lake were around 15,000 feet MSL, and then they were not rapidly, but they were climbing probably as high as 17 and a half around Mono Lake, which is to be expected for that area. But one of the things that was occurring is that my vent on my glider does not close all the way. And so if I'm getting cold, I really have no way of keeping out the very cold air outside. And so around Mono Lake, I checked the outside air temperature of the air, and it was 15 degrees Fahrenheit. And so I was pumping in anywhere from 15 to 21 degree Fahrenheit air into my cockpit for, an hour and a half on my way south to Mono Lake. And so around Mono Lake, I became very cold, noticeably cold. And so as I made my way north, one of the things I also found out was my P tube, which doesn't completely drain with the way it's set up, froze. And so I found that out when my catheter started filling up like a water balloon, and I had to fly like that, concerned that at some point the water balloon was going to come off and fling pressurized urine through the cockpit. And so I was kind of worried about my parachute getting dirty, say. Eventually I did get low enough, it warmed up when I got around Topaz Lake, that I was able to relieve the pressure, pun intended, and get my pants closed back up, and that got a little bit resolved. But I had been cold the entirety of the time. And so around Lake Topaz, which is, what would you say, like 100 miles or 60 miles from...
Probably, 60 or so from Truckee.
I needed to make a decision, and there's kind of a common way to get back into Truckee is to take this mountain ridge just north of the lake, which is called the Pine Nuts, and you take that, and you usually can find your last...
Pine Nuts being on the east side of the lake, right? On the east side of Reno and Carson City.
Yeah.
Reno, Carson City, and Minden Valley, that there.
Yeah, so you might have heard the Pine Nuts if you know about people flying out of Minden. And so the Pine Nuts are usually like a great place to get your last climb. You can get up to 16,000 feet, 17,000 feet, and make your final glide in with very comfortable over the lake and to get home. But for this day, the Pine Nuts didn't look like the clouds were actually high enough to do that.
Barba, thanks so much for joining me. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Chuck, again for inviting me. It's always great to chat about the episodes that you already made, about future plans and anything. I always enjoy it, and it's really great. Thank you.
Well, I think we're going to be hearing from you again very soon.
Hopefully.
If you would like to say hi and let us know where you are enjoying the podcast, we would love to hear from you. If you are a glider pilot and want to share your aviation journey, contact us at chuck@soaringthesky.com or send us a message on our website at soaringthesky.com, and Chuck will get in touch with you. We hope you join us next time for another soaring adventure here on Soaring the Sky, a Glider Pilots podcast. Soaring the Sky is written and produced by Chuck Fulton. Original music for the podcast was written and produced by Kim Spangler. Graphic design for the podcast was created by Zachary Fulton. Voiceover work was done by Michelle Perez.